Caroline Strawson, and I'm a multi-award-winning EMDR and rapid transformational therapist. So my goal for you is to help you move from PTSD to post-traumatic growth, from trauma to transformation, to help you heal, survive, and thrive after narcissistic abuse. Having been through my own narcissistic relationship myself that I came out of now over 10 years ago. So if you haven't hit subscribe to my channel and like, please do so, and that way you won't miss any of my videos as they come out. But I'm really pleased to welcome you to my channel. Maybe it's the first video you've watched that I have done, but I'm really passionate about giving you the tools to understand narcissistic abuse, because narcissistic abuse is trauma. When we hear people talk about depression and anxiety, these are just symptoms of trauma. And narcissistic abuse is trauma, which is overwhelm to your system, to your capacity for you to be able to cope, because it's just literally full on all of the time, leaving you like a shell, leaving you feeling broken, just as I was 10 years ago. If you knew me 10 years ago, you wouldn't even recognize me. And I often say, I wish I almost had a film crew wandering around filming me as I was literally at rock bottom. I had complex post-traumatic stress disorder, depression, anxiety, self-harm. I used to use my toothpaste to literally gouge out the tops of my thighs because I really felt like I needed a volume in my head, because I felt crazy. I felt alone, I felt lost, I felt broken, I felt like nobody was believing what I was saying, because my ex-husband was portraying himself to be this charming, really lovely person. And I felt like the more I was trying to tell people he wasn't, the more crazy that I looked. So what is it that finds people in a narcissistic relationship? Because it doesn't happen by accident. You didn't find yourself in a narcissistic relationship for no reason. It happened because you are what we call a codependent, somebody who has a lack of self, a lack of self-love, a lack of self-belief, self-confidence, self-esteem. Now, if you knew me before I got married to my ex-husband, you'd have probably thought from the outside that I looked like a really confident, ambitious woman. Now, I'm not saying that I wasn't ambitious and that I wasn't confident, but I also had a deep-rooted subconscious belief about myself that I simply wasn't good enough. And that came from my childhood. My dad, and I love him dearly, I would sit and maybe do gymnastics routines in the lounge, and my dad would give me a 9.99 recurring. And I thought I'd done a perfect routine. Now, of course, as an adult looking back, I can think, oh, my dad was just trying to be funny. But actually, as that child in that moment, I thought, hey, I think I've done that really well. I should have got a 10. Maybe I'm not good enough. And then that sets off a whole chain reaction of then, as other things are happening, everything then boils back to, well, must be because I'm not good enough. You know, maybe if something happened, must be because I'm not good enough. And that then really gets wired in. So that made me a magnet to toxicity. It made me a magnet to a narcissist, which is why I found myself in a narcissistic relationship for 14 years, which very nearly broke me. And I've always said, if it wasn't for my children, I wouldn't be sat here doing this video for you today. So it's something, although I work with all trauma, narcissistic abuse is something that I hold really close, because I've had personal experience of that. And I know how hard it is to heal. Time, sadly, does not heal narcissistic abuse. What you have to be is really intentional. And that starting point is actually looking at, why were you even in that relationship in the first place? Because I'd hazard a guess, whether you're watching this now and you're still in a relationship with someone who you think is a narcissist, and if you're wondering whether they're a narcissist, scroll down. I've got a great video called Am I Suffering with Narcissistic Abuse Syndrome? Go and watch that, because that will really focus on what you are feeling, as opposed to, is my partner a narcissist? Because so often I get so many messages saying, am I a narcissist, or is my partner a narcissist? And I always bring it back to you, because you can't argue with what you feel as opposed to what somebody else is doing. So that's a starting point. So go and watch that video if you haven't watched that, if you're kind of unsure whether or not your partner may be or maybe not a narcissist. So when you know that, what exactly has happened for you to end up in a relationship with a narcissist. So we tend to find, if you have a narcissist, the opposite end of the spectrum is a codependent. So a narcissist and a codependent actually are really coming from the same page to start off with. They're both coming from a lack of self, a lack of worthiness. But, now this is a big but, okay? A codependent will recognize that there is something wrong, and they will choose to use their behavior to try and prove to everybody else externally how worthy and good enough they are, because that wasn't instilled in childhood. Okay. The narcissist, they won't do that. They won't do that at all. They will get other people to behave in a certain way towards them. So the codependent behaves in a way towards others, and the narcissist has other people behaving towards them. So you can already start to see that a codependent who has a lack of self, I'll prove I'm worthy, I'll prove I'm good enough, and then finds himself with a narcissist who goes, yeah, keep on showing how worthy you are, keep it coming, keep it coming. Because ultimately, you will never be good enough for a narcissist. Nobody will. Because the goalpost will always move. Just as you think you might have been good enough or worthy, the goalpost will change. Now, this doesn't happen at the start of the relationship with a narcissist, because they will do what we call love bombing. So they will do everything they can to say and behave and do all of those things that you are lacking within yourself. Those deep inner wounds that you have about yourself, it's like the narcissist knows. They know what to say. Now, the wound from both a codependent and a narcissist is very, very similar, that lack of worth. And that comes from childhood. We are not born as a codependent to go into adulthood. Equally, we're not born as a narcissist to then be that as an adult. We come into this world codependent on our parents and caregivers to look after us. It is then their responsibility to instill in us a healthy sense of self, for us to simply know for who we are worthy and we are good enough. Not because of the way we look, not because we've just got 10 out of 10 in a test. We've got to know that it's not conditional, simply for breathing. We are worthy and good enough. Now, most parents, they're just doing the best they can based on their own childhood experiences. But ultimately, if they're not showing us that we are simply worthy for who we are, we as children then need a reason for that. Now, we don't think, for me, for instance, I didn't think, it's that 6-year-old girl, bless my dad. You know, I get why he's not giving me a 10, because he didn't have a really emotional childhood, so he doesn't really know how to be like that. Said no child ever, okay? I didn't know that. I didn't have that cognitive ability as that 6, 7, 8-year-old girl, but I needed a reason why my dad was only giving me a 9.99 recurring. So my reason must be because I'm not good enough. Because remember, as children, we always need that reason, just like we do as adults. And that reason isn't going to be an adult, the older person. They're meant to know, aren't they? I mean, I remember even thinking, I think I must have been about 23 years old before I actually realized my parents were real human beings. I didn't recognize that they could actually be flawed human beings. I just thought what they said was right and true, and how they behaved was exactly how they were meant to behave. And that anything then that I felt must have been because of me. Not that maybe, just maybe, they were doing the best they could, but my interpretation of that was, well, I can't be good enough. So that then becomes a wired and subconscious belief, which becomes a blueprint for who I am going to be then, who I was as an adult. So everything then driving me, which had some good points because it made me a really super high achiever, but I was exhausted all the time because I had no boundaries, because I lived in a world of always looking externally to make everybody else happy. Can anyone else relate to that? Can you relate to literally trying to make everybody else happy before yourself? And you are left exhausted. You are left sitting there thinking, I've got no energy left, because you're running around and trying to make everybody else happy, and you are at the bottom of the list. And this is codependency, that lack of self. We are always looking externally. I will do this and I'll behave like that and I'll say all of these things, because then if you are really nice to me and you say positive things to me, then that must mean that I am worthy and good enough. So you're always looking for that external approval and validation all the time. And that's what a codependent does. Now, the narcissist is like, hell yeah, keep it coming. You keep showing me how worthy you are, because the more you keep doing that, it's just like a supply to me. And we call this narcissistic supply. So again, the narcissist, they're not born a narcissist. It comes from parents and caregivers, and that could be they are a golden child, maybe they're being pitted against other siblings, maybe there is a real lack of love in the household, in which then narcissistic personality disorder, which is a cluster B personality disorder, develops. And then we never diagnose up until people are 18, but it's very hard to diagnose because a narcissist would have to recognize there was a problem and go, hey, I think I'm a narcissist, I think I need to go and get a diagnosis. Again, said no narcissist ever. Okay, it just doesn't happen, because a narcissist, remember, is always projecting everything onto others. So the codependent is there, I'll show you how good enough I am, and the narcissist is like, yes, please do, keep on trying, keep on showing me how worthy you are. And that's what makes you a magnet. And I always say there are 3 ways you leave a relationship with a narcissist. 1, they meet someone else, they get fresh supply. 2, you manage to crawl away, literally. And thirdly, you die in that relationship. Now that can mean suicide, because that can sometimes happen, or it could be you just stay in that relationship forevermore. But the serious nature of narcissistic abuse, the trauma of all of that, it is really, really deep. You know, the majority of people I see, literally complex PTSD at play here. We're not just talking a normal breakup here. This is trauma, this is abuse, this is domestic abuse, psychological abuse, okay? So I don't want you to underestimate how serious this can be for you, but I want you to know that you are not alone. And wherever you are in your journey of starting to recognize maybe that your partner is a narcissist, or even that your parent was, or a boss, or a friend, you're not alone. And I would just want you to know that there are reasons why you ended up attracting a narcissist into your life. And what we need to learn to do as that codependent, as that starting point, is stop looking externally. We've got to go within. We've got to go within and heal that deep inner wound that we feel about ourselves, that inner child wound, that I am not worthy, I am not good enough. Because if we're always living in a world where we're looking externally, we put expectation on that, and we end up living a life of disappointment, because we always think, well, if I behave like this, I want you to behave like that back to me, showing me how worthy I am. And then when they don't, we feel angry or disappointed. And this is when our ego comes up as our inner child protector, and we start to lash out, or we start to get upset. If you truly want to heal from narcissistic abuse, we have to go within. We have to go within and look at, where did my belief of I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough come from? And sit in that discomfort. And it can be hard and it can be painful sometimes. But when we heal that wound, we change everything. We see things so much more differently. We don't attract that narcissist into your life then, because ultimately what we want to do is have healthy, flourishing, thriving relationships with people, not relationship based on what you can do for them, exhausting yourself in the process, and then feeling disappointed if they don't react back to you. So the first thing you need to do is really start to heal that codependency. And if you look in the comments below, if you look in the notes, you will see I have a link to a healing codependency online program. It's only £39, which is about $50, $49, and it's 12 lessons, really helping you look at yourself thinking, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, explaining it in more detail about what codependency is. So if you're feeling like you can relate to any of this, and you're feeling like you want to take that first step towards really healing that wound, I really, really recommend doing that program. I've tried to keep the cost as low as possible, because I know what it is like. This used to be me. I used to be somebody who didn't feel worthy, who didn't feel good enough. And if someone made me feel like that, I would react in my body. I'd get really anxious, I would cry, I would have lots of tension. But that narcissist, remember, if you want to stop attracting narcissists into your life, we've got to heal that codependency, because a narcissist and a codependent, they are like magnets to each other. Codependent's going to keep trying, and the narcissist is just going to keep taking that supply. So if you want to stop being involved in that narcissistic relationship now and in the future, you have to heal your inner wound. We can't live in a world where we're trying to change everybody else, because we can't control what anybody else says or does. This is about you. This is about really you looking within, and that starting point is healing that wound of I am not worthy to one of worthiness and love and I am enough. Because if that comes from being a child, how many children do you know that aren't worthy or aren't lovable or aren't good enough? Yeah, none. All children are. But if as a child you started to have that belief that then got wired in, then that's going to have a massive impact on you as an adult and who you attract into your life. So if you want to change that toxicity that you're attracting into your life, and you want to change, maybe you've come out of a relationship with a narcissist, maybe you've got a narcissistic parent. If you want to stop all of that physical reaction that you are getting, the starting point here is going within and healing that wound of I am not enough. Because let me tell you, from me to you right now, you are enough. You are worthy and you are lovable. So remember, hit like, hit subscribe so you get my videos again. I hope that's helped you and given you a little bit of a taster of maybe your starting point, where you should go and why you even end up in a relationship with a narcissist. It was no coincidence, no coincidence. Because if I think about, say, my two sisters who aren't codependent, they would have never ended up in a relationship with a narcissist, okay? But again, it was all about my interpretation of things as a child. So you heal that wound, you won't end up in a relationship with a narcissist. You might meet one and maybe date one even, but a month or 2 months in, because then you've got a healthy sense of self, you will recognize that and you will leave that relationship. So heal that codependency and watch the different people that you start attracting into your life. So take care, everybody. I hope that was really informative for you, and I look forward to seeing you on another of my videos very soon.